I'm Professor Anicia Peters, and I'm from the National Commission on Research, Science and Technology in Namibia.
What do you think are some of the core elements required for resilient and sustainable funding models for science in Africa?
Well, I think that first of all, we need to look at what is being funded, right? So we have national priorities, but those priorities, national priorities are also shifting. Like for instance, in the case of Namibia, we have, of course, we usually have the priority of, food security, which includes your agriculture, you have your, the One Health issues, etc. But then you have very topical issues that come up. Like for a while it was the energy crisis, right, that we were experiencing or that we are still experiencing. And then we started, with this green hydrogen drive. Then suddenly, the oil and gas discoveries came in, and then suddenly the rare earth minerals beneficiation strategy, and that nothing should leave Namibia unprocessed, came in. Right now, there's an emergency situation declared in Namibia regarding the drought. So there's no water. So now we have to shift our focus, and we should have actually been consistently working on it. But it is just that is right now where we need to look. So you need to build, yes, you need to build resilient systems, but you also need to build flexible, agile, adaptive sort of systems. And within the SGCI, when you get funding, oftentimes the topics are defined beforehand, but the topics are sufficiently broadly defined. And I find that that's actually quite good, because now you will see your topical issues at that point in time is coming up in the responses to the grant calls that are going out. That's one thing. The second thing is that, it really adds to the ability of councils within Africa to actually give out grant funding, to researchers to work. And of course, because we're meeting together, across diverse councils within Africa, you can always build relationships, or you decide to sort of tackle one issue at the same time.
Can you describe one or two initiatives that your organization is involved in that are enabling this kind of resilience and sustainability of funding for science?
In Namibia, in indigenous knowledge, we have an indigenous knowledge management council at the moment, and we're doing a draft indigenous knowledge policy. But indigenous knowledge is so important if you put it in tandem with research. In Namibia, we've seen some excellent examples of research that was actually supported by the NCRST across universities. So one of the universities was concentrating predominantly on developing, sort of medicinal products from medicinal plants. Like for instance, they are combining nanotechnology and then producing antibiotics for, also it's not really antibiotics because it's natural, but sort of treatments for diarrhea, for kids under 5 years old, just using medicinal plants. And also, they are also doing the same for malaria, for instance. But on the other hand, you also have a lot of indigenous knowledge that is oftentimes just oral, and it gets lost because, there's no written record of it. And so the NCRST supported not only the development of the medicinal plants into different products, but also supported a whole repository of medicinal plants, so a digital repository, and also looked at the practices and captured it sort of in virtual villages where the elders were actually making the videos, etc., and narrating as to what certain plants, for instance, are used for traditionally. And I think that it is projects such as those that have a tremendous value that you might not find elsewhere in the world.
And are there lessons you can share on building partnerships that support greater independence of African countries in how they build their ecosystems?
You know, we oftentimes speak about the fact that within Africa, we oftentimes have this north-south partnerships. Your partnerships goes out, you know, to Europe and to the US, etc. We're quite famous for that. But I think within SGCI, the partnership building is tremendous to build it intra-Africa, right? Where, you know, this is the example where councils are, for instance, joining together. We've signed, for instance, an MOU with Zambia. I'm about to sign an MOU with Zimbabwe, and we are actually, and then with NRF, of course, but we join forces, and we, you know, issue then joint grants. We do joint projects, but then the partnership, you know, the partnership sometimes also then extend to your northern partners, right? Where you are getting a partner involved because you need specific types of expertise within that, and in turn you want to build your capacity. So I think that the SGCI is also enabling those type of partnerships to go multiple directions and to strengthen the partnerships as well.
Yeah. Excellent. So last question, how has your participation in the SGCI helped to increase visibility, voice, and also open doors for your council within the country's science, technology, and innovation system, within the African science ecosystem more broadly, and on the global science stage?
Your ability to actually give out grants, I mean, that already strengthens you. Because, you know, even with your own country, if they see that you are able to, you know, to give grants to researchers, and I'm smiling because I'm just remembering that because I worked at the universities in Namibia, right? So the researchers now are coming to all of our events, and they're participating very eagerly. And one of them told me that, no, Prof, they're all coming because they've seen that you've given out grants to some of their peers, and they're hoping that they can also approach you, you know, for some of the research that they are doing. So it instills a sense of confidence, you know, within our nationally, that we are able to fund specific types of research. But then it goes wider than that, right? So we get invited all the time to, you know, to go and keynote or to go and speak or to showcase, you know, what we've done, or our researchers get invited to go and showcase, you know, the research that they're doing. And ultimately they will ask, okay, so who was funding the research? Because they have to acknowledge it's part of their agreement. And when they say, oh, this is who is, you know, actually behind it, you know, that attracts other funders who then says, okay, let me partner with them. And especially if the research is really impactful and the research becomes, you know, known. The example that I gave, for instance, if you're working in very niche areas, then very quickly you are attracting, you know, a number of external funders who will come in. So we've also gained sort of a lot of visibility in terms of, you know, I mean, when we go to, for instance, to the UN, to the science forums, or we go to the AU, or so. For instance, I am the co-chair of the AU ASRIC working group who's developing the 4IR strategy for Africa and policy for Africa. And that, you know, that's a lot of visibility right there for an African council. And then participating on international energy forums. So, yeah, I keep on saying that at the moment, my staff and I, we get so many invitations for collaboration, so many invitations for partnerships, so many invitations for, you know, just go and, you know, have inputs. that it's actually tremendous. So I think that this, through the SGCI, that really strengthens our ability to also make a footprint internationally.